Ladies and gentlemen, welcome in to another edition of Flock Friday here on Chase's Sports News. I am your host, Chase Coburn, here with you today on a lovely Friday night here in November, our first Flock Friday in November. Last week it was on Halloween. Now it is Friday, November 7th, and the Ravens are gearing up for a really, really fun matchup this coming Sunday against the Minnesota Vikings in Minnesota, a game that may not be catching the radar in terms of national conversations, but I think just in terms of the storylines, the expectations, and the importance for both teams, I think this is going to be one of the most entertaining games of the week, and I'm excited to break it all down with you. Welcome, everybody, into the show. I am Chase Coburn, cover the Ravens and a variety of other sports here on Chase's Sports News, and I know Ravens Flock has been coming at me this week. I had a few tweets saying that I actually didn't mind Baltimore's trade deadline. I would have done more if I were the Ravens at the deadline, but I didn't want them to trade for a big star. They didn't trade for a big star. I caught a lot of flack for that. Been supporting EDC this week, but we're right back here, excited for another fun matchup. And frankly, Ravens Flock, it's all just a fight because we all want the same thing. That's for the Baltimore Ravens to go and capture a Super Bowl with Lamar Jackson at the quarterback position. And first, you got to get to the postseason, and a step toward getting back into postseason contention would be getting a win here this coming Sunday. This is a Baltimore team that was dead in the water at 1-5. At least that's what many thought. But even the odds makers still thought it was about a 50-50 shot that Baltimore made the playoffs just because of how talented this team is with Lamar Jackson back at the quarterback position. Tyler Huntley picks up a strong win against Chicago. Lamar Jackson returns last week for a dominant performance against the Miami Dolphins. And now they're gearing up the next 4 games for Baltimore, Minnesota, Cleveland, the New York Jets, and the Cincinnati Bengals. A clear opportunity for Baltimore to assert its dominance and reclaim its throne of the top dogs of the AFC North. But that has to start with a win this Sunday. And of the 4 games that I just mentioned, this coming game against the Minnesota Vikings is easily the toughest game that Baltimore will have on the docket. Please be sure, guys, no guest here this week, but if you guys do want to call in or comment, we'd love to be collaborative with you guys. So really appreciate it. Already have some comments. Yo, how you doing today, Chase? I'm doing just fine. What's up, Chase? And the chat. Yeah, guys, please be sure to keep commenting any thoughts you guys do have. And then, of course, please call in. I put the link on YouTube as well as on the Twitter X feed as well. So if you guys do want to call in, please just let me know. You guys can hit the link and I'll let you guys on into the stream. All right, really, really interesting game here. 3-5 Ravens, 4-4 Minnesota Vikings. Here's what we're going to do. Without a guess, we're going to kind of categorize this here real quick for a shorter live stream. We got 3 key storylines that I want to break down. So 3 storylines, 1 key to a victory for Baltimore, a player that you should look out for this coming week. And of course, I have to go and give my prediction of what I think is going to occur this coming Sunday in Minnesota between the Ravens and the Vikings. Real quick, another comment. I am a Jets fan, and I could say that's a free win for y'all. Yeah, after Sauce Gardner and Quentin Williams were traded, I think as long as the Ravens have 50% of their starters on the field, which, knock on wood, right now, they look fully healthy after some of their injury scares earlier in the year. As long as they are relatively healthy whatsoever, as long as the entire roster isn't hurt like it was earlier this year, that should be an easy victory for Baltimore at home against the New York Jets. But you can't look ahead. Got to keep your eye on the prize. And right now, that prize would be beating the Minnesota Vikings this coming week. So 3 storylines ahead of this game. The first, I think, that we have to mention, and it's kind of the storyline that I thought about, and then now it's kind of caught some attention today, and I really just want to give my thoughts exactly on this topic, and it's how both quarterbacks will handle the pressure. And it's more about Lamar Jackson, and we're not talking about the mental pressure, right? I mean, this is a big game for both teams, but it's not like do or die, season's over if you lose, type of playoff mental pressure. We're literally talking about the physical pressure that both of these quarterbacks could have. Both of these defenses are going to cause havoc in the backfield in this game. You just know it because you go back to Lamar Jackson, and all the numbers have popped up. Best success rate against the blitz, best passer rating against the blitz, but no defensive coordinator is better at blitzing the quarterback, you could argue, than Brian Flores in Minnesota. In fact, it was when Brian Flores was the head coach at Miami in 2021. That is when Lamar Jackson had his worst career performance, you could argue, in his 99 regular season starts. It was 2021 Thursday Night Football in Miami. The Ravens scored 10 points. Jackson had a turnover, and the rest was history. The Dolphins upset the Ravens in a 22-10 victory. So while it wasn't the 2-3 turnover game we've seen from Lamar, just in terms of overall offensive productivity, it's the lowest amount of points the Ravens have ever scored when Lamar Jackson's played a full game under center for the Baltimore Ravens. And so Brian Flores is that kind of a defensive mind, and he's going to know how to draw up success against Lamar Jackson. Now, these two have not played against each other since then. Flores was fired by Miami. They replaced him with Mike McDaniel, and Flores has just kind of been building his way up now into this defensive coordinator position with Minnesota, where he's been unbelievable and is again in head coaching conversations. But I think the Vikings, everyone's talking about the Vikings blitz, the second highest rate, but Lamar Jackson's the best quarterback in the league against the blitz. This shouldn't be an issue. The problem is there is a key distinction between blitzing and getting pressure on the quarterback. Oftentimes, quarterbacks, if they see a blitz is coming, instinctually, they'll audible. They'll get rid of the ball quick and they'll adjust. It's about disguising the blitzes, and even if you don't blitz, being able to just win one-on-one with the lineman, even if it's on a 4-man, 5-man rush, to be able to get pressure on the quarterback. And look, no quarterback is going to be elite against pressure. Look at what Patrick Mahomes did this week against Buffalo when he was pressured on over half of his dropbacks. But Lamar Jackson specifically has struggled to play against teams that can get pressure on him in the backfield. This has been a problem for many years, but has even been intensified this year. Lamar Jackson, again, we talked about his success against the blitz, but he has a negative EPA, expected points added, negative expected points added against the pressure this year, and an under 60% completion rate. Passer rating hovering around 100. So Lamar Jackson's about an average quarterback against the pressure compared to the transcendent MVP talent we think of him on a regular basis. And what's ironic is that teams actually blitz less frequently when they get pressure than when they don't. Teams are blitzing a lot, and they're not creating pressure on Jackson. It's when they don't blitz that they're actually creating the most pressure. So now this is on Brian Flores to say, look, how are we going to create pressure on the quarterback without blitzing, which we know Lamar Jackson can exploit? So that is going to be the key conversation for Brian Flores, and I think it's going to be a chess battle throughout the entire game between Todd Monken, the offensive coordinator for Baltimore, who's really helped Lamar flourish as a passer and not struggle as greatly against the pressure as he did earlier in his career with Greg Roman, and then also with defensive coordinator Brian Flores. I think it's going to be a battle throughout the entire game, not only on the field, but with the headsets on as well. And I'm curious to see how that battle does play out. Meanwhile, for Minnesota's side, J.J. McCarthy has taken a ton of sacks this year, 14 sacks in 3 games, a 17.5 sack rate this season, which would break records. And I know it's only been 3 games because of injury. That probably won't be sustained for a full season, but still an insane mark for 3 games as a quarterback in the National Football League. He's been pressured, though, 48% of the time. And his best game came against Chicago when he was pressured only 35% of the time. Back-to-back weeks, a pressure rate above 50%, and the results have showed he's turned the ball over in every game this year, and he actually does get a lot of time, 3.12 seconds on average for McCarthy to throw, which is the 3rd highest mark in the NFL this season. But oftentimes that's him holding the ball too long, not knowing when to get rid of the football, and he's taken a lot of sacks. So I think in this game, you're going to see both front sevens really make an impact. Baltimore's pass rush hasn't been great this year, but they've moved Kyle Hamilton into the box, and they've had a ton of success. I'm curious to see which team's pressure on the opposing quarterback is going to be more detrimental for the opposition. Is it going to be Lamar Jackson's pressure, and can that limit Baltimore's offensive attack? Or is Baltimore just literally going to obliterate J.J. McCarthy and this Vikings offense? I think that has to be the biggest storyline that you're paying attention to this coming Sunday when these two teams face off. Want to get to some comments here before I get into the game. Speak on trades. Yeah, real quick, if you do want to talk about some of the trades, we're going to talk about Draymond Jones in a minute, and that may spoil a segment that I have later on here in this live stream. But no, I like the Draymond Jones trade a lot. A conditional 5th-round pick that could turn into a 4th-round pick if he meets requirements that he should hit, if he is going to live up to the expectations in Baltimore. I don't mind the trade. It's a 5th or 4th-round pick. I think you want to get another proven pass rusher. And sure, he's not the blockbuster that a lot of fans maybe wanted, but he has 4 sacks or more in 6 straight seasons. So it's someone dependable and reliable in that pass rush, which I do like. If you go back to the Alohi Gilman trade, he has been a key reason for the turnaround. He's been stable enough in the back end for Baltimore to be able to move Kyle Hamilton into the box, which has been their biggest problem this year. And their defense has kind of woken up because of it. 3 straight games with 17 or less points. So those 2 trades were great. Fans are getting mad the Ravens didn't trade for a lineman. Only 2 offensive linemen have been traded over the past 4 deadlines. Only 1 was traded this year, and it wasn't even a great one in Taylor Penning going to the Chargers from the Saints. So I just think that it was unrealistic to have a good quality offensive guard on the market, as bad as Daniel Faalele has been this season. Unfortunately, the Ravens are just going to have to ride with him the rest of the way, unless there is someone in free agency or someone on the practice squad. Unless Ben Cleveland resurrects his career, Emory Jones gets healthy. It's going to be probably someone right now that's already here in Charm City. I am shocked the Ravens did not add someone else defensively in the interior of the defensive line, considering the injury status for Tavius Robinson and Broderick Washington and then Nnamdi Madubuike being out for the season. I am shocked they didn't add someone in the interior unless they really trust what they have now. I know Travis Jones has played better, but he's a nose tackle. I feel like you need another D tackle in there. I'm shocked Baltimore did not go after one, to say the least. So that's kind of my quick thoughts on the trade deadline. If the Vikings can limit their penalties and mistakes, they can beat the Ravens. I feel like that's every game, right? If you're any team and you can limit penalties and you can limit the turnovers and the self-inflicted errors, and you have a good chance of winning the football game. This is a game at home, and I think that if you're Minnesota, if J.J. McCarthy doesn't turn the football over, you're going to give yourself a good shot. But that's a big ask for a quarterback who's turned it over at least once in every single game he has played this season. And he's a rookie quarterback who John Harbaugh oftentimes exploits. And we're going to break that down in just a minute as well. We have a comment here. Sup for Kalen Patel, Dak or Lamar? Next question, Lamar Jackson. This is not close. Huge shout out to Dak Prescott. I think he's done some great things in Dallas. One guy is a good quarterback, and one guy is a generational transcendent MVP talent who's one of the top 15 quarterbacks we've ever seen lace up and is a Super Bowl and Super Bowl MVP away from getting himself into top 5 conversations. So huge shout out to Dak Prescott. That's not even close. Flores needs to come up with a great defensive scheme like he did against the Lions, for sure. McCarthy's playing great considering he's only started 3 games. I'm going to have to disagree with you there. I don't think J.J. McCarthy has played extremely well. He's been able to go 2-1, which is part of the game, right? 27 or more points in 2 of those games. That's also part of the game. But I don't know if there's a direct correlation there to J.J. McCarthy being on the field and thus finding more offensive success. I still think he limits you. And I'm not saying Carson Wentz is better, and obviously he's injured, but I still think J.J. McCarthy limits you. And it's not like Sam Darnold where he can go and make the big plays. I don't think McCarthy can go and make those big plays yet as a starting quarterback. And so I still think that could limit the Vikings and hamper their offensive success in this matchup against Baltimore. But I think that is going to be a key storyline to pay attention to is J.J. McCarthy, another really big test for him against a really, really hot Baltimore defense that has played really well in their recent games. Another storyline I want to talk about is John Harbaugh against rookie quarterbacks. And I know J.J. McCarthy is technically not classified as a rookie because he was drafted last year and he played in the preseason and he had the knee injury that has now made this his first season. But let's think about it as if he is in his first year, right? Because this is pretty much his rookie season. This is the first glimpse of NFL football we're getting from J.J. McCarthy. And John Harbaugh has a 27-7 record against rookie quarterbacks in his career. He's beaten Jaden Daniels, C.J. Stroud, and others in just previous seasons. And I'd argue McCarthy has a much slimmer playmaking arsenal than the aforementioned quarterbacks that I just mentioned. And he's turned it over in each of the games, as I did mention. I'd expect him to make a mistake or 2 or 3 in this game. And I think that if John Harbaugh and Zach Orr have done a better job in recent games, if they could draw up a really good scheme, get McCarthy to turn the football over, the disparity, even if these teams are pretty much even, which I still think Baltimore has the edge despite their lackluster play recently, and I said recently kind of in the first portion of the season, the disparity between Lamar Jackson and J.J. McCarthy could be so large that it doesn't matter. Like, Lamar Jackson barely, he never turns the football over. He turns it over against a handful of teams. He turns it over against Kansas City and Pittsburgh. And when he's not playing Kansas City and Pittsburgh, he doesn't turn the ball over that much. Can Brian Flores figure out a scheme to get him to turn the ball over? Sure, but we're watching one of the best quarterbacks of all time right now in his prime. And so the disparity between what we just talked about in Lamar Jackson and what he could provide at the quarterback position compared to a first-year quarterback in J.J. McCarthy with limited mobility and a limited playmaking skill set at this point in his career that is prone to turn the football over, that disparity in quarterback talent, quarterback consistency, and quarterback dependability could be what decides this game. It's not like it's Lamar Jackson versus Baker Mayfield, where it's an elite quarterback against a semi-elite quarterback. McCarthy isn't even near there yet. And so even if the Vikings go out and they play a better game than Baltimore, if Lamar Jackson and this Ravens offense can score 20, that could be good enough to get the job done. So I'm curious to see how John Harbaugh does perform here against a first-year quarterback in J.J. McCarthy, as he has played really well in his career against first-year quarterbacks in the past. And then also here, can the Ravens establish the ground game with Patrick Ricard? I think that is the third storyline, because obviously the rushing offense has not been the one shattering records like we saw last year with Lamar Jackson and Derrick Henry. We haven't really seen Lamar Jackson much as a runner, whether it is that hamstring injury or just a byproduct of the fact that he turns 29 in January. He seems just as agile, but maybe not as quick as he once was. He doesn't seem to want to take off as much as he used to. And so Derrick Henry's been contained. The offensive line hasn't done a great job. And a lot of people thought that all those concerns would be alleviated when Patrick Ricard, the Ravens all-pro fullback, would return. But 2 games now against Chicago and Minnesota, he looked somewhat respectable against Chicago. He didn't play much. They were easing him back into game form. But then here in game 2 against Miami, he was just a liability on the field. Every time he was on the field, he was missing blocks. He contributed to Jackson's big sack of the day. Every time, the follow Patty mentality that the Ravens kind of followed last year with Derrick Henry when they gave him the football, that did not work at all. In fact, Derrick Henry found less success when following Patrick Ricard. And so I think it is just getting back in the swing of things, getting back into game form after suffering a really serious calf injury that kept him out for the first 6 games, the first 7 weeks total, if you include the bye. So I don't know if we're going to see him back on his all-pro form this week, but I am curious to see now. He gets a week and a half to rest and look at what he's done poorly. I'm curious to see if we get the all-pro version of Patrick Ricard that we saw last year. And I think if the Ravens can get that this week against a really lackluster and streaky Vikings run defense, I think that they could possibly just run the football and take control of the game, right? When the Ravens have controlled the time of possession, that's when they've done a lot of the dirty work. They played a decent game against the Los Angeles Rams. They only scored 3 points, but they controlled the time of possession by such a wide margin where if Lamar Jackson was in that game, it wouldn't have been close. If they played Tyler Huntley the full game, it wouldn't have been close. So if the Ravens can control the time of possession against a quarterback that maybe can't combat that with a deep passing game, you could be looking at Baltimore taking control of this football game and quickly. So I think I'm really curious to see how Patrick Ricard does help this Ravens run game and if they can establish a really strong presence on the ground in this matchup. If we're going to talk about a key to a victory, and I feel like this could apply to every matchup, but particularly in this one, if the Ravens win the turnover battle, I can't see a way they lose this game. I can't. I'm looking at J.J. McCarthy, and I'm looking at one of the most turnover-prone quarterbacks in the National Football League. I'm looking at Lamar Jackson, who is the polar opposite. Unless Brian Flores can create turnovers on Lamar Jackson to where the Vikings go and they win the turnover differential, I can't see a world where Minnesota gives the ball away more than Baltimore and wins this game. I know the Ravens are 3-5. I know that even with Lamar Jackson on the floor or on the field, the jury is still out on whether they are a good team. They've won 2 games with Lamar, and it's been against the Browns and Dolphins. Like, the jury is still out on this team. I'm not going to act like they are the perennial Super Bowl contender we've been accustomed to the past few years. But compared to Minnesota, they are by far the superior football team. And like they were last year in Buffalo, where you dominate the football game, the only way you lose is if you make the self-inflicted errors. For as badly as Baltimore played in that Buffalo game, they actually played really well. Those 3 turnovers, for as detrimental as they were, they're a Mark Andrews drop away from probably winning the game. With 3 turnovers, mind you. With the Bills had 0. So this year when the Ravens have won the turnover differential, they're 3-0. When they've lost the turnover differential, they're 0-5. For me, it's a really simple concept for Baltimore. You win the turnover battle, you win the football game. Because the Ravens, if they do not have those other extra added variables, which are often turnovers, if those extra other variables aren't favoring their opponent, it is very hard for an opponent to outplay Baltimore to that magnitude to go and win a football game. It's very hard for them to do. I don't know if there is a team in the league that could do it. I mean, Philadelphia did it last year. They're probably the only team in the league that without forcing a turnover can dominate Baltimore and not even keep them in the game. So if the Ravens don't turn the ball over and the Vikings do, the Ravens will win this football game. For me, it's that simple. We have another comment here. The Ravens are 3-5 and the Vikings are 4-4. So in my opinion, it's anyone's game to win. Yes, you could say that. But I think that there has to be established that Baltimore is not your ordinary traditional 3-5 football team. Right? It's a football team that in games that Lamar Jackson has played in full this season, which he's played 4 games in full. The Ravens are 2-2, and their lowest, total in terms of scoring in a game is 28 points. And it came last week against the Miami Dolphins, where the Ravens kind of took the pedal off the metal in the final, in the back half of the fourth quarter. So I think that, and I'd actually argue, even though we won AFC Offensive Player of the Week last week, it's not like Lamar Jackson played really well to the Lamar Jackson standards that we're accustomed to. Right? We are used to watching Lamar Jackson tear up the stat sheet, dominate on the ground, make insane highlights, throw the deep ball, and it got better throughout the game, but it almost felt like Lamar was sloppy last week. He didn't want to run the football. He didn't feel confident running the football, and it looked like the hamstring injury still hampered him, and he threw for 4 touchdowns and didn't have a single turnover and had a passer rating above 143 and won AFC Offensive Player of the Week. And so it's like, if that's Lamar Jackson coming off of an injury, what are we going to see now that he's going to get more back in the game for him? And I know that Minnesota's defense is far more formidable than Miami's, so I don't expect Lamar Jackson to go out and replicate what he did last week statistically. But Lamar Jackson has gotten to the point in his career where, unless he's playing the Chiefs and on a rare occasion the Steelers, it's very rare that we don't see Lamar Jackson go out and put up 25 points or go out and be that huge difference maker that clearly decides the game. Every field he steps on, you could argue Lamar Jackson's the best player on the field. He is certainly the best player on the field in this matchup. For as much as you love Justin Jefferson, at the quarterback position, it's not even close who the best player on the field is. And so I think if you compare 3-5, 4-4, sure, you could play that game. Or you could play the game of, this is the first time the Ravens have been fully healthy this season. Full practice participation this week. Every single one of the 53 men they'd want to have on their 53-man roster is suiting up. And so you get a fully healthy Ravens team that, when they were fully healthy entering the season, they were projected to win the Super Bowl, the Super Bowl favorite. Obviously, that's not what I'm expecting going into this game. But Lamar Jackson and a relatively healthy squad, I think, will be good enough to run past this Minnesota team, both literally and figuratively. I just don't think the Vikings will be able to keep up. I really think this is a J.J. McCarthy, Lamar Jackson game. And unless Brian Flores draws up a scheme that can have Lamar Jackson score less than 20 points, I just think eventually the Vikings are going to be the first to give, the first to make a mistake. And I think the Ravens will pounce on it because I think they can. The other element that I do want to bring up, the Vikings are well coached. Kevin O'Connell's a fantastic coach. Brian Flores is an incredible defensive coordinator, probably the best in the league. Meanwhile, Baltimore has had its difficulties this year in terms of its coaching staff. Todd Monken's taken a lot of flack unnecessarily. I think he's done a solid job. I've been on this show multiple times and I've explained that I don't know. I've expressed, is it possible that John Harbaugh can win a Super Bowl in Baltimore with the score? I don't know. It's gotten rough in Baltimore sometimes with John Harbaugh. It almost feels like maybe Harbs has reached his shelf life in Baltimore. So I think the coaching disparity could be a key thing as well. I mean, I think Harbaugh's been better the past few weeks. I think Zach Orr has clearly made some adjustments, but Kevin O'Connell and Brian Flores certainly supersedes anything that John Harbaugh and Zach Orr can provide. So if they are able to draw up a scheme that can limit Lamar Jackson, the coaching down the stretch could very well decide the game. It decided the game against Buffalo. It decided the game against Detroit. It certainly decided the game against Kansas City. Those were also 3 very good contending teams. Without Lamar Jackson, without playing a dominant team with Lamar Jackson, can that still be such a pivotal factor? That's a question coming up. We do have a caller here, and I want to bring him on here. Brandon Hardy. Thank you for calling in. Brandon, do we got you?
Hello?
Hi, you there?
Yeah.
Thanks for calling in. What do you want to talk about? Thanks for taking your time here today.
Nah, I just wanted to say, I watched your previous episode, I believe. I'm not sure if it was another Flock Friday, but I just want to say, what guts to go on your own show and say your own hometown coach, John Harbaugh, should be fired. Wow.
I've said it before. Look, I think at this point, considering how well they played, you certainly give him the opportunity to ride out the season. And I do think it was unrealistic for us Ravens fans. Now looking back, hindsight's 2020. I think it was unrealistic to expect the Ravens to go out and fire John Harbaugh, considering he's given this franchise 18 years of service, and whether it's because of his own good, a Super Bowl championship and one of the best pedigrees and reputations in the National Football League, where the Ravens have been a playoff team and in playoff contention every single season. I think it was unrealistic to expect the Ravens to get rid of Harbaugh. I still think, even if this team gets into the playoffs, it is still up in the air about whether John Harbaugh can lead this team to the success that they want to reach, which is a Super Bowl championship. So, yeah, I have certainly criticized Harbaugh on this show. I'm going to give him the benefit of the doubt the rest of the way, because obviously he's not going to be let go at this point. And I think he can lead this team back to the playoffs. But if it's another first or second round exit in the postseason, for me, you have to have the same conversations we were having a few weeks ago.
Yeah, I could completely understand that, man. Last question for you before I take off. Should the Ravens trade Derrick Henry this year?
No. I mean, obviously the deadline's passed at this point. I saw there were a lot of people. I'm pretty sure a Pats fan, Brendan. I saw a lot of Patriots fans were like, "Are we going to go out and get Derrick Henry? Reunite Henry and Vrabel?" Yeah, no. For the people who think this has been Derrick Henry's problem, they've clearly been out of line, and if they haven't been watching, they've seen misconstrued information. Is Derrick Henry the 1,900-yard runner he was last year in terms of quality and production? Probably not. But is Derrick Henry the reason why the rushing offense isn't breaking records anymore? I don't think so. I think when we've seen him get really good run blocking this year, we still see that explosive burst. He can't get it right off the snap anymore, but we can see him kind of develop it as the play gradually moves along. So I think if the offensive line and the interior of the offensive line continues to improve and take strides, as we have seen the past few weeks, we saw Voorhees take some strides, Linderbaum, Rosengarten's been good at right tackle. If Faalele could be at least competent at the right guard spot, I think Derrick Henry will get things going. And for as quote-unquote bad as he has played, right, because a lot of people are thinking this is a down season for Derrick Henry, which you can argue that's the case. But this season, with his bye week already kicked in, this season, Derrick Henry, 128 carries, 629 yards. That's sixth in the NFL. Sixth in the NFL. This season, his 6 rushing touchdowns are sixth in the NFL. So in a down season for Derrick Henry, where it feels like nothing has worked for him, he's still been arguably a top 5 runner in the National Football League. So I think give him some better run blocking, and we're going to see the Derrick Henry that we have been accustomed to for previous seasons. Brendan Harding, thank you for taking the time to call in today.
Yeah, no problem. Good luck, Chase. See you in a bit.
Thanks so much. Appreciate it. And I know Brendan here, as I just kick him off there. I do owe Brendan a spot on his podcast as well. So, Brendan, I will be texting you and communicating with you about possibly scheduling that. Thank you so much for calling into the show here today. Some interesting conversations for sure. Again, if you guys do want to call in, continue to comment. We are taking callers. We're going to wrap up the stream in just a few minutes here. Do you want to talk about a player to look out for in this matchup? I think that's Draymond Jones, the newcomer in Baltimore, as we did talk about at the trade deadline. Again, 4+ sacks in 6 straight seasons, 4.5 thus far this year in what's in line to be a career season for Draymond Jones. I just think he's the type of player that, is a reliable, dependable edge rusher. We'll take some attention off Kyle Van Noy. We'll take some attention off Mike Green. And as crazy as this sounds, take attention off Kyle Hamilton if he hasn't been dominant enough already. I just think he'll open things up across the board. And for as lackluster as Odafe Owe was playing this year, and for as good as Alohi Gilman has been in his place, to have Van Noy, Matabike, and Owe last year all on the defensive line with Travis Jones or Michael Pierce at the nose tackle spot, it just felt like you couldn't, when you double teamed one, it opened up everything for everyone else. They double teamed Matabike most of the time. So Owe got 10 sacks and Van Noy got 13.5. I'm not going to sit here and act like Draymond Jones is another Nnamdi Matabike. They play different positions. Matabike is an all-pro. Jones is a serviceable, above-average veteran on the defensive line. But just another guy in there for a pass rush that has looked improved. And I think you're going to see the Ravens get more consistent pressure on the quarterback. And I think you're going to start to see, I don't know who it's going to be yet, but one particular individual pass rusher who's going to start to thrive and take advantage from the pressure being put and the attention being put on some of the other guys instead. It just adds another guy here, and I think that Draymond Jones in a situation where you're playing J.J. McCarthy, who is prone to the negative plays, who's taken 14 sacks this season with a 17.5% sack rate. I think that even though it's his first week in Baltimore, Harbaugh reassured immediately he will be on the field, and I expect him to make an impact, even if it's small. I do expect him to make an impact to some capacity in his first game with the Flock Nation. We're number 41. Mike Green, we're number 45. Calvin, we're number 53. Can the pass rush finally start to make something happen consistently? They've started to get there. I think Draymond Jones could be the next step to officially getting there this week against a Minnesota team that doesn't have the greatest offensive line and doesn't have a quarterback who knows maybe when to get rid of the football at the right time. Last but not least, it's been a great stream. I appreciate all the viewership and all the support throughout the stream. Real quick, let's give a prediction. And I think that the Ravens will win this football game. And I think that it's more like, again, the only way the Vikings win the football game to me is if they win the turnover battle or if there is a really, really disrupting injury for Baltimore. Because if they don't win the turnover battle, which I don't think they will, there's no other way to combat what Lamar Jackson is going to be able to do on the field with J.J. McCarthy. I just don't see a way, particularly if Aaron Jones is going to be out. The rushing game isn't as, prolific and dominant either. Aaron Jones is a big part of that attack. It was okay with Jordan Mason. I think the two-headed monster could do a lot for Baltimore's defense. It hasn't been great against running backs this year. So maybe if the Vikings go for 200-something yards on the ground, then that's a different story because then they're controlling the tempo. But I just feel like a lot needs to go right for Minnesota, even at home, to go and win this football game. I got 23-17 Baltimore. I don't think the Ravens are going to play a good game. I don't think the Ravens are a great team right now. I think they're still going through a lot of hurdles. I think this is a team that is still not playing at a really high level, but they have a lot of really good talent. And they have, I'd argue, the best player in the entire National Football League. And so when you have that, it alleviates concerns elsewhere. So I think Lamar Jackson will be okay in this matchup. I don't expect him to shatter records or be in player of the week conversations or anything like that. I could see him turning the ball over. I do think Brian Flores will generally keep him in check. I think what is defined as keeping him in check has definitely shifted over the past few years. Keeping him in check was really shutting him down a few years ago. Now keeping him in check is him not making your defense look like a D2 collegiate football school. So certainly the bar has been set. I think this is going to be a lot of a Derrick Henry game where I don't trust the Vikings run defense at all. I think it's going to be more Derrick Henry, more running the football, and more domination for Baltimore. 23-17 going to be your final. The Ravens will go to 4-5 and put themselves back in the mix for an AFC North or postseason spot. Thank you guys so much for tuning in. I am Chase Coburn saying so long here from Flock Friday. Take care and happy football.